And our first question today comes from a man called Kieran Sheehan, who again is no relation. And his question is: do you think McGregor's camp didn't give Paulie enough respect and credit for helping them out, or was it blown out all out of proportion by the media and stuff? Let's just kind of a wider kind of discussion on this. Damon, what was your whole take? I know there was a lot of things came out this week. McGregor released those photos. Then Paulie Malignaggi kind of hit back, and then he ended up walking away from the camp. What was your take on the whole thing?
It's interesting because usually it's kind of two sides of this whole thing, because usually what happens in the gym is supposed to stay in the gym, whether it's good or bad. You're supposed to not really talk about sparring or things like that. And so when Conor put out the photos and there was a certain narrative being painted, you immediately kind of got the idea of a story being told. But then you had to realize Paulie was out there doing interviews, and he's saying things like Conor has above average power, but he doesn't have oh my god power and things like that. So it's kind of a weird thing where I think both sides probably have a little bit of fault to take in this whole situation. I think from what I've heard, Conor put the photos out, or people from his camp put the photos out in response to Paulie's interviews. So it's kind of like, it's what came first, the chicken or the egg? Who's really to blame for this whole thing? I think, for Paulie, when you go in and you're a paid sparring partner, you're planning to be paid as a sparring partner, you're not really supposed to talk about the sparring sessions at all. You don't really hear Floyd Mayweather's sparring partners coming out and saying, yeah, I caught him with a good punch and he doesn't really have good power. So I think in a way, Paulie has to take part of the blame for this whole thing. And if you really think about it, Conor really hasn't said much of anything. He put out the photos. He made a comment on All Access last Friday where he said, he got his ass whooped, but that was from the first sparring session. That's not even covering what happened recently. So, both guys probably got to take a little bit of the blame, but I think a little bit, just a little bit, maybe more on Paulie, because he did start talking about it, started doing interviews talking about it when maybe he shouldn't have.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think, as you said there, I heard the exact same thing, that McGregor put out those photos in response to the interviews. Now, people are saying the interviews, he didn't really say much in the interviews. He was complimentary and things, but as you said, the oh my God power things, he's come out and said since that, the body shots and things where he talked about ethics. He tweeted a couple of weeks ago that he'd have no problem with McGregor releasing photos and things of the camp. So, you can understand it. Look, you can definitely understand it from Paulie's point of view, why when McGregor released photos of him looking bad, that he didn't like it, because as you said, and I think everyone would agree that, what's kept in sparring, what happens in sparring should be kept in sparring. But from what I've been hearing, I think this all kind of stemmed from what actually happened in sparring, and Paulie not being too happy with the way things went. There's been a lot of rumors. Paulie come out and said he whooped McGregor's ass. McGregor said the same. From what I've heard, I heard McGregor got the better of it in almost every aspect of it, and was, Paulie didn't take it that well. That's what I heard now, whether you want to believe that or not, but that's what I heard from people close to it. The knockdown as well, that was a big bone of contention, and from what I heard, it was a knockdown. It wasn't a push. That McGregor hit him with a 4-punch combination, put him on the ground, and that was it. And Paulie came out and called it a push down when it actually wasn't. So, look, things, I suppose they've created a hype for the fight. They've created a Malignaggi McGregor kind of hype now as well, and it's all kind of boiling over, but. Look, I think McGregor had kind of no problem with him. He wanted, all's fair in love and war kind of a thing. And, they were working together. But another point of it as well is Paulie, I think, was coming into camp, and he did an interview here in Ireland. I think it was with Off the Ball, where he said he wanted to come into camp, do his sparring, obviously, but then give McGregor, pointers, maybe a little bit of coaching role as well. But I don't think that was happening. I think McGregor just wanted him as a sparring partner and nothing more. Paulie's come out since and said, he has all these yes men with him, and maybe he's a little bit hurt by that as well, that he thought maybe this was a road into maybe coaching or something like that. And that didn't just happen. But those are the kind of things I've been hearing as well. You're going to hear a lot of stories, I suppose, but there's definitely been a breakdown in communications as part of it anyway.
Yeah, listen, like I said, both sides have to take a little bit of the blame. You can't just say Conor's completely blameless in this whole thing. Like I said, what happens in the gym is supposed to stay in the gym. Everyone famously remembers Michael Bisping joking after he sparred with Luke Rockhold that he was the unofficial Strikeforce middleweight champion. It was a funny comment. We all kind of laughed about it. But then that became a big point of contention when they had their original fight, because, it kind of pissed off Rockhold that he even brought it up, because he kind of went in there as a favor to Michael Bisping, and so it's kind of like that. It's like, where do you draw the line, and I think that, as I said, Paulie's retired. He's doing the analyst thing. He does a phenomenal job at that. But let's be honest, he's getting the spotlight more now than he's probably had since boxing, and maybe even more than he got during his boxing career. So I understand you got to parlay that. You got to take advantage of that. He has his own podcast now. He's teasing about talking about the podcast, and I'm quite sure that'll be the most listened episode he's ever had. I get it. I don't fault him for that, but I think sometimes you got to weigh the good and the bad. It's like, do you want to, I guess here's the other thing I would think about this. When this whole situation kind of came up, one thing I thought about the situation that kind of, occurred to me the other day, and I said this to somebody. If Paulie had gone in and sparred Floyd Mayweather, and let's say Floyd put out those same pictures and said the exact same thing, really didn't say anything, but put out the same pictures and things like that with Paulie, do you think Paulie would have been as angry? And I say no, because it's okay to get beat up by one of the greatest boxers of all time, but Paulie can't put the picture out there that he's losing to an MMA guy with no boxing experience. I think that the ego part of it, and I'm not blaming him. I get it. I'm not blaming him. I'm saying I think that's part of it as well. Because if you think about that, if he had a big sparring session with Floyd and Floyd put it out there, I guarantee you the narrative would be different. I think Paulie would be saying, man, it was a tough session and we had some good throws, and Floyd's the greatest, man. He's the greatest of all time.